Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is well, is doing okay. And we are happy to have you all here. We're still virtually. We're still having our TSS lectures on Sundays virtually. We will be phasing into the presential ones, but we will let you know as soon as we start. So today we are very happy to welcome Joyce. She will be our speaker of the day, and today she'll be talking about life, the gift from God. And it is a gift that we should treasure. So I'm going to ask Teresa if you could please do the initial reading with the initial prayer, and then just give it to the word to Joyce. Thank you.
From the book Living Spring, it's going to be the chapter 23, Before the Sublime. Do not regard as common what God has purified. There are expressions in the gospel which, like flowers attached to a divine branch, should be taken from their context so that we may marvel before their individual brightness and fragrance. The voice from heaven that speaks to Simon Peter in Acts entails horizons that are much broader than the apostles' personal issues. Regular individuals are surrounded by earth's glories. Even so, they think everything is ordinary. They are incapable of valuing the richness around them. Blind before the superb spectacle of life that frames their development, they trample on the treasures of the world without thinking about the patient effort of the centuries that infinite wisdom has taken to perfect and select the qualities that surround them. How many millennia were needed to shape a rock? How many elements are harmonized to form a simple ray of sunlight? How many obstacles were overcome so that the flower could materialize? How much effort was necessary to domesticate certain energies did it take for the patience of heaven to build the complex structure of the human body in which the incarnated spirit is manifested? Before the time, reason is magnified. My brothers and sisters, do not forget that the Lord has placed you in a veritable paradise for your earthly experience, a paradise where the tiny seed can produce enormous quantities, and where flowers and water, soil and atmosphere invite you to work for the increase of the eternal treasures. So each and every day, praise the Lord who has provided you with the precious opportunities and divine gifts. Think, study, toil, and serve. Do not regard as common what God has purified and ennobled. So let us now all close our eyes, connect our minds and our hearts to God, our Father of infinite love and mercy, to Jesus, our Master and our Guide, to the good spirits of TSS that protect our lectures every Sunday, and thank them for the opportunity of being here one more time together, learning, studying, and for all this light that shine over us now in our homes and at TSS. And we ask our benefactors to enlighten and guide Joyce, our sister, during this lecture today, so we can learn a little bit from her lecture. Thank you, and so be it.
So be it. Thank you, Teresa. Joyce?
Thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be here with you all, even in a virtual way. Hopefully, we're all going to get together very soon. It's coming. So today I'm going to talk about this topic, life, the gift from God. And as Spiritists, we read, we study, and we learn all the time about how important is each experience in life, each experience as incarnated in, considering that at each incarnation is like a school. So every life experience that we have on earth or anywhere is like in school for us, an opportunity for us to learn, because by being incarnated in a physical body, we face many trials, many expiations, many opportunities to kind of enhance, or at least opportunities to bring up more of our gifts, our the good feelings on us, improve our charity and our capacity to help and show some love to each other. And at the same time, also all those interactions in a physical body that we face every day help us to try to minimize our evils, or in other words, our selfishness, our pride, and so on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and mainly the main topics that, because every time that I think about this topic, I think about three things that happens in this life, in our current moment on earth now. When we think about the gift that we receive from God, it in many ways bring to me many questions about how come and what are the circumstances that lead to a person to shorten their own lives in some way. So in other words, it brings me topics such as suicide, such as abortion, such as euthanasia, all things, different things, but all in some way are examples of ways to shorten the life. And of course, people who make that decision, they have different reasons, different circumstances. They are not exactly the same, but they all bring to the same result, that are shorten the life. In other words, shorten this gift that we all received from God. And those are all very polemic topics, very challenging, and sometimes very sensitive topics. So my idea here is not to judge anyone. I just want to bring a little bit of the Spiritist view in some of those topics. So I decided to talk a little bit about abortion and euthanasia. I will not touch on suicide, although all the comments and things that we're going to discuss about euthanasia and abortion in some way applies to suicide as well. But again, I don't want to judge anyone, especially if in our viewers today, is there anyone that made that decision? Please don't feel judged. This is mainly for all us to learn and understand the consequence, because that's what Spiritism also teaches every day, that every decision, every choice we make in life, there are consequences, and those are inevitable. So making wrong choices or mistakes is part of this learning journey that we are all in. And if I, as Joyce, maybe didn't make any of those mistakes in this life, I might have made them in the previous life. And so we are all in the same pathway, okay? I want to disclose here that for this topic, that as I said, first, I'm a spiritist, and second, I'm a physician and an anesthesiologist. So I think all those together made me totally in favor of life, and I'm always going to defend that in all circumstances. I know that people face different challenges that may make them make different choices, but my roots and my background lead me to this, to be a big defender of life. And that's what I'm going to bring you today here also, why I defend that, why I believe that is the right choice to go. And I will bring some Spiritist feel what Spiritism tells us about that in order to support these arguments. So first, I think we need to understand a little bit about some concepts, some words that we hear on the news or when we read something about this topic, because it can be a little bit confused. So let's say when we talk about euthanasia, for example, what is exactly euthanasia? So the euthanasia is the practice of intentionally ending a life to relieve pain and suffering. That is the meaning of the word. So we do have the passive euthanasia, that is pretty much when we withhold treatment necessary for the continuation of life for someone. And there is what they call active euthanasia, when we actively go there and start a treatment or give some medicine or inject something that will directly shorten their life. Okay, so it's like giving a lethal injection to someone. Okay, which is most of the time more controversial than the passive euthanasia. We see more often what is called the passive euthanasia, when the family or the patient just give up and want to stop everything that is supporting their life, that is helping them to go through that situation, and then they kind of slowly die. And there is something called assisted suicide that is kind of very, very similar to a passive to euthanasia, and this has been mentioned more often those last maybe 2 to 5 years in Canada, because it is allowed here. So the assisted suicide or assisted end of life is about helping someone to take their own life at their request. In other words, is the final deeds is it is undertaken by the person themselves. So there is the medicine here in Canada now allows a physician that agree to kind of support that patient, and that's what is called the assisted end of life. So as per, I mean, there's a protocol, of course, that they go through and to make sure that that is the choice for the patient, and usually families involved too. But at the end, there is a physician as well that support them and help them through that moment, mainly to minimize pain and suffering. Like when I say suffering, is more physical suffering, and help them to reach that, either by also giving some medication, sometime like deepen the sedation that at the end will lead to the death. There is something also called dystonasia. Dystonasia is the term for futile or useless treatment, which does not benefit a terminal patient. It is a process through which one merely extends the dying process and not life per se. So consequently, the patient have a prolonged and slow death, frequently accompanied by suffering, pain, and anguish. So this is kind of a little bit the opposite way from euthanasia. Dystonasia is when futile things are applied. We know we have that patient that is chronically ill, and the death is inevitable. It's getting closer and closer, and instead of maybe giving some comfort to alleviate pain and suffering, the medical team or the family or whoever is taking care is kind of trying all the heroic measures to kind of hoping to extend the life, and that is not in the benefit of that patient, because will not change the course of the disease, is just extending the suffering. And sometimes it's hard to know exactly each situation, can be challenging. Not all the time is so clear, but the dystonasia is more, in my point of view, a desperate measure from families that sometimes cannot accept that the death is coming. So that's what I see more often in my practice. Because also in my lecture here, we're going to talk about the preciousness of life, of this as a gift from God. But we also need to understand that we are here through a period. We are in this school for a course, and for all of us, this course in this physical body is going to end at some point. So we also need to have this understanding that the life is great, but all of us, even the very loved ones or the close ones, will have their time that they will discarnate and they will continue this journey in the spiritual world. So it's important for us to understand that too. That is part of the process. Okay. And there is a term that is called orthothenasia, that refers to the art of promoting a humane and correct death, not subjecting patients to misthenasia or dystenasia, and not abbreviating death either. That is pretty much the natural process. And that's what Spiritism is in favor for. And that's what me as a physician believe on that we all should go through the process of orthothenasia when we start to be sick or when we are chronically ill, that we know that our body is going to go through that process. And at some point, naturally, we will reach to the end. And that is okay, and that is part of the process. But we will not shorten that process, but at the same time, we will not unnecessarily extending it for no reason. So those terms, I think it's important for us to understand. And as I said, here in Canada now is allowed the physician-assisted dying, which is a voluntary active euthanasia in some way. It's legal here for any person older than 18, okay, and who any patient older than 18 who have a terminal illness that has progressed to the point where natural death is reasonably foreseeable. To prevent suicide tourism here in Canada, it's only allowed for people who is covered by any Canadian health insurance, like any province health insurance. So like for foreign people that is not covered by the health system here, this is not allowed. However, we see many countries in the world that this is also allowed for anyone. So, and we see that very often what is called this tourism, that people travel for those specific countries just to be able to receive this treatment or the euthanasia. Switzerland is one example, and we see the number of assisted suicides in Switzerland has risen more than fourfold in little more than a decade. So since they allowed that, like if you see the graph, it's sky high. It's incredible how much it increased. And not only by Switzerland citizens, it's also because many people travel there for that. And again, as I said, no judgment here, but we need to understand that all this is going to have a consequence. Okay, all of those choices will have a consequence, because unfortunately, our physical body, in many ways, especially if you are not so much spiritually evolved, we only see the life in this moment. And it's hard to see when someone is suffering in front of you, or if you are the patient with a chronic, incurable disease. We understand totally how much that can be painful, how much limitation that can be bring to your life, how hard that can be. But we are here to show you that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, and Spiritism bring that light to us. When we understand the purpose of life, and when we fully understand this sentence, life as the gift from God, when we understand the meaning of this gift, it helps us to understand a lot the reason that we are going through that pain, and that help us have the resignation to understand and go through it, find the strength that we need. Okay, it's interesting to talk about this topic as well, because I can tell by myself. I did medicine in Brazil, and maybe because that is more, I would say, compared to Canada or compared to many first world countries, I think that Brazil is a lot more spiritualized country. Maybe because they have more, like, people are more connected to religion and to spiritual life in some way. Not only Spiritism, but all the other religions. I don't remember during med school. I was pretty much about 15 years ago or so, 20 years ago, but still I don't remember people like we, as during our studies, talking much about this, about shortening life, about euthanasia, about abortion, about all this in school, because that was not even a topic that was in the conversation, in the discussion. Even when we had in ICU those very critically ill patients, family never brought that up, like most of the time. I know that this topic has been more popular in Brazil as well, but what I'm trying to say is that what I see, that more developed countries, they are in some way richer, and all that wealth and that richness come more from material side. So unfortunately, that all that development is more connected to material side and less to spiritual side. And so that's why we see a lot more often those topics being talked and discussed in a very natural way, as something so simple. And we see many more patients and family that make that decision, that choice, and unfortunately they don't see the consequence beyond that. And also because they don't even know or understand that there is a life beyond this one that we see at this moment. So that's why I think it's important, this type of conversation that we are having here. That's why it's important to bring more knowledge from Spiritism and also other religions, for those who are connected to other religions, to think about it and bring that to your work or your environment. Because I see here that many people decide that without the knowledge that the life is not only this. So shorten the life now will not necessarily shorten the suffering of that being, because we know that this is just a physical body that we see now. As a spirit, that person will continue the journey. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because that will give them the chance to redo it, that pain and suffering will continue in afterlife, in the spiritual world. So, and actually by making those choices, we might be increasing a lot this suffering and this pain for after. So we'll make even harder for that spirit to redo and reconnect and overcome that mistake. So in other words, we think we are helping, but we are making the journey for that spirit a lot more harder and more difficult. Okay, so here I see a lot often like this conversation between my colleagues as something so natural. People speak about that as any other topic, but we clearly see that they don't see beyond the grave. Okay, so same thing about abortion, and again, very, very polemic topic that is being discussed a lot more in Brazil now. This is something that was discussed during my time there as a medical student. Euthanasia, not so much, but abortion, yes. and again carry the same consequences. Okay, we all know that abortion is the termination of pregnancy by removal or expulsion of the embryo or the fetus. And we know that when properly done, the abortion is one of the safest procedures in medicine, but the unsafe abortion is a major cause of maternal death, and especially in developing world. And this is mainly the topic that all those who defend the abortion, they hold to defend the abortion, because they defend the healthy and the life of the mother, which makes sense. I understand that. It's totally reasonable to think that. I don't condemn them, but we just need to remember that in that situation of pregnancy, there are two human beings. There are the mom and there are the baby. And unfortunately, when we hold too much in these arguments about defending the maternal life, the mother's life, we neglect the other ones. There is a similar spirit that is already incarnated, that should have the same opportunities as anyone else, and unfortunately is very fragile and does not have any way to defend himself or to fight for life in any ways. And we go there and make the decision to cut it short. So again, no judgment. I know how hard it is sometimes to go over an unwanted pregnancy. It carries so much challenges, especially for the women, because she's the one who's going to carry that baby, and most of the time she's the one that will not give up on that baby after. We know that there are some moms that give up on their babies, but when you compare between mother and fathers, it's a lot more common for the father to ignore the baby than for the mothers. I guess because also the connection that we have with the baby since the gestation, the maternity makes it harder for us to see mothers giving up on their babies. But still, today, what I want to bring up is the understanding that any choices carry a consequence, and also the understanding that there are many, many options to think. And I see the same as the euthanasia, I see the abortion as a desperate choice in many times, because you don't have much time to think. And when you find the pregnancy, you only see, for those moments, you only see the challenges and the negative consequence that pregnancy might bring to your life. And in a desperate moment, you choose for that. But there are many resources nowadays, not only Spiritism, but many other religions and many other supportive organizations that can give you the support. So before making that choice, look around and see, because there's a good chance that you'll be able to find the support you need. And even if you are not able at all to have that baby after, there are many families that could that is waiting for adoption, that could be a good home for that baby, instead of shortening the life for him or her. Okay. Also, it's important for us to think about all the things that happen. I bring a little bit, just a little numbers. I not spend too much time on this, but the abortion in Canada is legal at all stages of pregnancy, regardless the reason. If you want, you just go and ask for that. Of course, most of the provinces and most of the physicians, they accept to offer assistance for that if it's 23 weeks or younger, because that is the stage that in medicine we consider that the fetus is not viable. And so I guess they feel better if they perform the abortion on that period of time. And also the procedure per se is easier because the fetus is smaller, of course. Beyond that, there are many provinces that does not support completely, although it's legal, but it will be more challenging for that patients to find support and places where can offer the treatment. Okay, so here in Canada in 2018, it happened about 85,000 of abortions were reported, and we believe that this counts for about 90% of the all numbers, because there's always some under report. So if you think about that, that's quite a lot, 85,000 abortions. And about 90% of them were performed within the first trimester. As I said, as earlier is easier to perform it, like from the medical point of view as well. And I think makes everybody feels better also. The mother who does not want the child, of course, she does not want to increase that connection through the gestation. So sooner she finished that, I guess she psychologically might feel better to do that. As per World Health Organization, around 56 million abortions are performed each year in the world. And that about consider that about 45%, in other words, almost half, are done unsafely, carrying consequences for the mom as well, right? So it's a big number. So in my mind, as a spiritist, I believe, I truly believe that there will be a point that we don't need to have this discussion anymore. We don't, because people discuss a lot about having or not having laws in favor or against the abortion. This will be, again, a huge topic in Brazil in the next election between the candidates. I'm in favor, I'm not in favor, and the people will make decision who to vote and pick on those little things. And at the end, in my mind, is I prefer to believe that will be a point that we as a society will evolve so much that we don't need to have those type of laws, because will be on us the understanding about what that means, and the understanding about how precious life is. So we will understand that every choice has a consequence. And so we don't need to go for that. We need to educate ourselves. There are so many ways to prevent pregnancy, for example. And if that happens, there are so many ways to go through that without the option of abortion. So for me, instead of carrying this discussion, if we should have or not have laws for abortion, I think we need to think more about the education of the population. And when I say education, it's not only education at school, but also spiritual education, not only intellectual education, but also spiritual education, in understanding what is life, and understanding why we are here. Maybe that pregnancy would be such an incredible opportunity for that mom to overcome a mistake from the past, but maybe that child would bring something so good. Maybe it would be someone so important for the society. You never know. So we cutting that life short carries huge consequence. And there are many studies also that shows that definitely brings some psychological effects on those moms later on. I think it's impossible for you to go through that and not having consequence of that, even in this life, because you're going to carry that forever, right? It's not possible not to. But yes, some people tells me, well, but having an unwanted pregnancy and that baby, that also going to bring so much stress and psychological problem for that mom too. Yes, in some way, but it's very hard to know which one would be worse, right? And when we study Spiritism and we understanding the meaning of life, we clearly see that life is always the right choice, because any trial or any challenge that is happening for you, this is not by chance. This is all consequence of something that have happened either in this life or in previous lives. So it's all, or maybe even choices that you as a spirit made before this incarnation and you don't even remember. So by choosing to give up and cut that opportunity down, you are cutting down a huge opportunity on yourself to grow, to evolve in this journey. The good news is that if you have already made that mistake, Spiritism also tells us that there is always a chance to redo. There's always a chance to start again. Okay, we are all, as I said, in the same pathway of growing, of evolving. We all carry the same mistakes, the same vices, and we are here to learn and to be able to clear that from us, and to be able to use the next day as a better day, as another opportunity, as another school, as another chance to redo it. So there's never a final judgment here. There's always a chance for you to evolve. So based on all this that I mentioned, sometimes we ask, oh, but why those people make those mistakes? So there are so many reasons, right? Depression, fearing loss of control or dignity, feeling a burden, dislike of being independent, with the pandemic that brought so many other stress, like finances, economical problems, lack of support, lack of material support, lack of spiritual support on some people, all that. So then that brings that question. Is anything of those reasons, is that allowed to a human being to destroy something that he cannot create? So that is something that we need to reflect on. Okay, so we are all creation of God. We are all part of his creation here. So I did not create my kids. I was not created by my parents. They were only instruments to bring me here. We are all creatures from God, right? And so based on that concept, am I allowed to destroy something that I did not create? So this is the first topic for us to reflect. In the Spiritist book, the question 953, they ask, when individuals see an inevitable and terrible death in front of them, is it wrong to shorten their suffering by a few moments through voluntary death? The Spirits answer, it is always wrong not to wait for the terms set by God. Besides, how can they tell with certainty whether their time has indeed come, despite appearances? Like in our eyes, looks that the time has come, but how can I tell? Or whether they might receive some unexpected help at the last moment. So this answer is very clear, right? In other words, it tells us that what our eyes see in this physical experience might not be the real truth. When I see a very close family member in front of me in a hospital bed, suffering a lot, my eyes only see the pain. But when I read, there are so many books from Spiritism that showed this moment. There are so many different examples. They show in many different ways that sometimes the physical pain that I see on that patient now, the spirit is not really feeling that pain, because the spirit that is close to this carnation is receiving so much help from the spiritual life that we cannot see, but the help is going on that moment. And all that process, it's been so important to help them in the afterlife that also we cannot see. And by shortening their life, it might impair them to see, to go through those minutes, even like 5 minutes, a day, 2 days, several weeks, may not mean anything to us that are here and going through that difficult moment, but for that spirit that is in the process of discarnation means a lot. Sometimes a few seconds that he's in the bed, going through that process of discarnation, that spirit can go through so many reflection and understanding. Is like a movie that goes through their minds, that help them to understand all the mistakes you went through, all the challenges, all the trials. And those moments can be crucial to help them in the next life, to help them forgive, to help them being forgiven by someone. So by cutting those moments, we cut that opportunity. And we don't see that because we are blind. We are seeing only the physical pain that human being is suffering, right? So the spirits also said, we admit that suicide is reprehensible under ordinary circumstances, but we are supposing a case in which death is inevitable and in which life is only shortened by a few instants. And then the spirit answer again, it is always a lack of resignation and of submission to the will of the Creator if we shorten that life. So instead of thinking only the fact that here we have a chronic patient, that the death is inevitable, we need to think that, yes, the death is inevitable, but I'm not the one to figure out when that will happen. So instead of cutting that short, we need to think in how can I help that individual to go through that moment in a peaceful way. Maybe a pray, maybe pain medication, maybe giving the support, spiritual support, maybe giving some comfort, try to have a nice bed, try to give, like in the medical field, there are what is called palliative medicine, that is to support and helping that individual to minimize the physical pain, but not necessarily cutting the life short, okay? So they also asked, what in this case are the consequences of such action, of like choosing to shorten the life? And the spirits answer, as always, an expiation in proportion to the seriousness of the wrong, according to the circumstances. So, in other words, it means there's always a consequence. If we don't allow that spirit to go through that process in a natural way, and we cut that short, the spirit that is facing that disease, plus those who made the decision, they all gonna face some level of expiation in another world to correct that mistake. Okay, and that of course will be according to their circumstances, according to the level of evolution of each one. More you know, of course, more responsible you are for your choices, and that will all take into consideration. But there is always going to be a consequence. Okay. So also in the Gospel according to Spiritism, the chapter 5, they talk a lot about the preservation of life and the consequences of that and the importance of that. And one of the things that they ask is, should we put an end to our neighbor's trial? And the spirits answer, all of you are on the earth for expiation, but all of you also, without exception, must employ all your efforts to mitigate your neighbor's expiation according to the law of love and charity. In other words, we are all going through similar challenges in different levels because we all have different backgrounds, but none of us is 100% happy. We all have different trials in our lives, okay? So we need to understand that, but at the same time, understand that I will try my best to have a better life, but it's also my responsibility to help my neighbors as well. So every action to help the others to go through their trial is our responsibility. And as spiritists, our responsibility, knowing and having all those knowledge, our responsibility is not to go there and help them to make the choice of euthanasia or abortion or suicide. Our responsibility is to bring them this knowledge, to share with them, to give them the support and show them that there is a life beyond this, that maybe we can share a book. Maybe, I know it's hard to impose, and that's not our job as spiritism, to impose our ideas, but it's our responsibility to share our knowledge, and at the end will be their choices, right? But as a good spiritist, we need to understand our role in this process by helping our neighbors, by helping our community, and this means by sharing our knowledge and our beliefs, our understanding. So we are not in favor to shortening one's life, but we are totally in favor of giving them the support and helping them by all means to go through that situation. And in the same chapter 5, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, item 28, it was asked, is it permissible to shorten the life of a patient who is suffering with no hope? Who is suffering with no hope of a cure, like in other words, with suffering with an incurable disease? Is that okay to shorten the life? And the spirits answer, no matter how extreme the condition of a dying person, no one can say with certainty that his or her final hours has arrived. So we do not know. So the materialist who see the body only and does not consider the soul cannot comprehend these things. But the spiritist who knows what happens beyond the grave knows the value of one last thought. And as I told you guys, like sometimes those last 5 minutes, people can rescue so much, can go back and make a big reflection and have such a big understanding, like in 5 minutes, that we have no idea, right? So who are us to taking away this precious opportunity for that body that is chronically ill in bed? Okay, so the gospel also continues. So mitigate final suffering as much as you can, but guard against shortening a life, even for only a minute, for that minute might save. For that minute might save many tears in future. And we don't understand that now, especially when we are so stressed out and having someone close to us suffering with some pain. But it's important for us to remember that, okay? It's sometimes a minute that we allow that body to go through that process might save many tears in the future that we cannot imagine. And in the book, O Consolador, The Consoler, will be the translation to English, by Chico Xavier through the Spirit of Emmanuel, they asked, can euthanasia be good in cases of incurable disease? Again, very similar question that we found in the Gospel. And then Emmanuel said, man has no right to euthanize in any case, even if it is the apparent demonstration of benevolent measure. Prolonged agony can have a precious purpose for the soul, and an incurable disease can be a tool to clear the spirit's imperfection in its journey toward the sublime acquisition of virtues for the immortal life. Moreover, God's designs are illimitable, and man's precarious science cannot decide on the problems associated to the spirit's needs. In other words, here Emmanuel is clear again, explaining again what we just read in the Gospel, that we do not have the right to shorten that life in any circumstance, because we have no idea what is going on between the spiritual world and the physical world. And when we read so many books, even from Emmanuel, also André Luiz, in the series of André Luiz, there are so many examples that show exactly this window when a body is chronically ill and is very close to discarnate. They explain to us how many things happen between the spiritual world and the physical world in order to support and help that human being that is suffering at that moment. And so it's important for us to have that in mind, that nobody is alone. And there are many support, not only to the sick patient, but also to the whole family. That process is a big opportunity for everyone to get together and face that situation and evolve with that situation, because that is happening for a purpose. So just to finalize, I think, if you go in the Gospel and the Spirits book, both, there are so many things about that as well. But I want to finalize. There's also one passage here from the book Reformador. I don't know. I think that is not translated in English. It's from the Brazilian Spiritist Association Federation. And it says, therefore, it is not up to anyone to stop the process of suffering through euthanasia. The death of the body does not nullify the one's specific needs at the multiple stages of spiritual growth. Go with the same concept that we just discussed, right? So in summary, from what we said, euthanasia is a no for us, for any spiritist. Like in the Spiritist view, it's always a no in any circumstances, because the Spiritism tells us that there is not the solution, will not help. It's just an illusion that is going to bring some help, but it will actually cut down the opportunity of everybody involved to evolve. The dystonasia should always be avoided, which is that measure to extended life unnecessarily, in a way, like futile. So Spiritism said we should value life, but we shouldn't be afraid of death. So the death should come naturally, should be a dignified process for every human being. And once we understand the meaning of the life, and we understand that we are eternal human beings, eternal beings, we understand better those words, that it's a process that we all gonna go through. We need to understand, we need to try as much as we can to mitigate the suffering, but we shouldn't shorten the life. And the orthodoncia is the ideal, where we understand that this is a process and everybody needs to go through that with dignity and respect. And the same thing for abortion and suicide. It's always a no, because we see that it's more as a desperate measure, desperate choice. And those who decided to go through that pathway, mainly they are only being able to see the life at this moment and not see beyond the grave, right? And Spiritism tells us clearly that the suffering that we see here will continue and might even get worse if we decided to go through those easy solutions, right? So Spiritism is always in favor of life, but of course not and never against death, because we know that there is a natural and inevitable course of the earthly life. We all know that the death is not the end. This is just a process in this journey of evolution that we are going through. So remember, you, me, you, and everybody that is listening, we are all instruments of God. And we are all here to defend life, to support life, and to help everybody understanding the meaning of the life and understanding that yes, we face many different trials, many different difficulties and challenges, but that's why we are all here together as a family to support each other. And as a Spiritism teach us all the time that happiness, like fully happiness, is not from this world. So the expectation that we're going to achieve that now will not happen. But we all know that we are in the pathway to get to there, and we will. But we still need to learn a lot, and every challenging that we face now is an opportunity for that. Okay, so I think that's basically what I want to discuss today, and I'm open for questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Joyce. It's some hard topics that some people are very, challenged to even think about it, but it's such an important topic. And this is like, as all spiritists that we all take this as something that we have to really take to heart and to really reflect upon, and to really live, and because we are surrounded by friends and family who are going through that. So it's always a way of thinking that's not only that problem right now that we'll be facing, but the one that we are going to face upon this lifetime, because we are immortal spirits, and every act that we have going to have consequences. Unfortunately, we only have 4 minutes. I'm going to leave those 4 minutes for people. Joe, is there anybody who are asking questions?
Yes, absolutely, Joe. I totally agree with you. And even I have to say that the psychological consequences for the abortion, I see that more, absolutely a lot more in the women too. It seems that maybe because the father didn't have a chance to get that connection right away, because I mean, the babies and the mom, and I don't know. I don't know the reason, but I totally agree with you that it needs to be a discussion from the whole society. Everybody is responsible, and I'm really, really, really in favor of more education. And unfortunately, I think that's what I would like to see more from the politicians, more plans about that education, and less that thing, oh, I'm in favor of abortion, I'm not in favor, I'm gonna, I don't care about that much. I think it's more important to see what they can propose about education on those people, like education, the girls, education for, to avoid get to this point of desperation, right? But at the same time, I hope that we'll get there.
I like to
This is a very, very difficult question, Joe, and I see that every day too. It's very challenging, and I think it's require, I don't know, each situation to be discussed because it's very different patient to patient and situation per situation. In my mind is what type of life support that person is having and what's the purpose of that life support. Let's say if a patient is totally only living because they have those drugs to keep the heart beating and the breathing tube being breathing for them, maybe it's a situation, and of course depends on the disease and which stage they are. If there is if the medicine found that there is no reversibility for that, then for me it might be futile to keep going if there is nothing to be reversible there. Like, in other words, that body is pretty much dead already. It's just the machine that are keeping them. But again, there are moments that your body can be kept just by the machine, but we know that it's going through an infection, for example, that can be treated, or some situations that can be reversible, and that'll be a different situation, but I find very hard to sometimes to practice what I said, the orthodontia, that it's to understanding that the death, the dying time is arriving, and we need just to provide comfort and let that go naturally. And in that situation, I guess it would be okay to just turn off that support and let that body go naturally. But it's very tricky to, in some situations, to see if that's, if that is the right time to do that turn off or not, when we know that exactly. It's not so easy for everyone. So I think, in my mind, as a spiritist and as a physician, I think the family needs to go to that process and see how many days we've been in that situation, what is the disease, what is exactly that patient is going to go through. Because I also see some, let's say, very elderly patient that is just kept like the brain is pretty much dead, like not totally by the task, but it's pretty much no response. And the family is just desperate, asking to keep everything. So we clearly see that the opposite, that sometimes the patient just cannot accept the death. And we keep that for months and sometimes years for no reason. And I don't know, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's very hard to see what is the right choice. I think it's a process, and I think to make that decision to turn off things, it requires a lot of discussion, support from spiritual care, whatever those persons believe, and a big discussion between medical team, family, and everyone involved.
Thank you, everybody. Unfortunately, we're going to have to
I think
finish
Teresa wants to
today.
say something.
No, no, but if you don't have time, that's okay. I'll
Go ahead, Teresa.
No, I just want to bring something. You're right about when's the moment to disconnect or not. And honestly, I haven't seen in the ICU patients who disconnect and they go immediately. And patients take days. They recall the family and say, come because it's now. And it's a Wednesday. And the patient only disconnects on the Friday. So we'll take naturally and it's going to go. And I think everything is about also intention, right? What's the intention of disconnecting as a family? It's because I understand that, I don't want to make them suffering here, or I'm keeping them on the machine because I cannot go through the suffering of losing them. So there's a lot of things that have to be getting in context
Absolutely.
here. But one thing that I want to talk is about abortion here in Canada. Yes, we do have a lot of people who do abortions here in terms of despair. Still have young people who are afraid of being kicked out of the house and everything. But the truth is, here in Canada, in a first world world with so much education already, free condoms everywhere, I think what we really need here is more the spiritual education than anything else. Because now we're living in a society where this absence of spirituality is leading to prejudice and discrimination. To the point now that I have seen my colleagues, two colleagues, one just had a baby, one was pregnant, saying that both did the genetic test. And they both said like the much natural, as if they're talking about, the clothes that I changed this morning, how they would do an abortion if the test would come positive for Down syndrome or autism.
Oh, I see that all the time, yeah.
So we're living in a society now that apparently being an autist or Down syndrome or any other genetic illness gives you less right to have a life.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I'm not even going to talk about consequences of abortion here. Where do we become a society that we think that someone with Down syndrome, for example, who are people they're working, active, super loving, because there's no more loving child than a kid with Down syndrome, have no right to life.
Yeah.
So a lot of those thousands and thousands of abortions now happening in Canada, a first world country, is due to the lack of spirituality, is due to prejudice, is due to discrimination, because that's what we're doing, discriminating, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Being autist, being Down syndrome, it's normal. It's part of our human beings, part of our genetic as a human beings, right? We need to start to see, I think the spiritual education is what's going to take away this prejudice, this discrimination, and all of the other things also that bring us as well to this moment of despair and feel that I don't have a way out, right? Because it is true, the day that we understand the consequence, we understand everything, having a law, not having a law will make no difference. We're not going to accept it. And just to bring really quick an example is, as a doctor here from Canada shared the story with me, a patient was over 40, came to him, and she's having a lot of troubles at her home with her teenager daughter, 15 years old, rebel, wanted to leave the house, angry with the family all the time. She comes back later, and then she tells him she's pregnant. She's over 44, and she said she went to the doctor's here, to the OB, and the OB wants to ask her to do this genetic test. So she wants him to explain her, the family doctor who shared the story, to explain what's the genetic test and what's for. So he explained her, it's because of your age, and basically if it comes positive for something, they're gonna offer you abortion. She goes, well, I need to talk with my husband. And then she goes, talks with the husband, comes back and say, I'm not gonna do the genetic test because it doesn't matter what's the result. I would never do an abortion because my religion won't allow that. Like, God doesn't want that from me. So she goes back to the OB and say, I'm not doing it. And then the OB called the family doctor and said, you have to force her to do this genetic test. And goes, I cannot force her. It's her right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A year later, she comes back to his office with the baby in her lap, clearly with Down syndrome. And he asks her, how's everything? And she goes, our life could not be better. He said, our daughter, who used to give us so much trouble, is so in love with her sister that she now leaves the home leaves school, comes running home because she wants to take care of her sister. Doesn't talk about it anymore, leaving the house anymore. Doesn't like nothing. It completely changed the family. We're so happy. We could not be better now.
It's amazing. It's amazing example. Exactly what we mentioned about the opportunities, right?
Yeah.
That we cannot see, and sometimes we cut down that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Very nice example, Therese.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. I hope we can inspire people.
Yes, absolutely. And this is all the main reason that we are here, right? It's
Exactly.
to give topics for people not only to get inspired, but to reflect upon their the beliefs that they get from whatever, whoever, you know, and they just they go in life without reflecting. And this is also a great learning process, not only for the person who is going through this hardships, because it is a hardship, decisions that they have to go through, but as you were saying, Joyce, from all the family that have to go through. It's a learning point to everyone involved, everyone. So thank you guys so much. This was, as I said, it's a very complex topics, but it's so important for us to face and learn and understand all those, everything that it's about the life that we have and how important it is to treasure the life that we have. So, Joyce, do you mind giving us the final prayer? And thank you so much again.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. So let's close our eyes now. Think on God and this amazing energy that is surrounding us at this moment. Let us ask God to send this energy and this positive vibration to everyone in need at this moment, to all houses and families that are facing this crucial moment of making the decision, or those who are in some way thinking about this mistake of shortening the life, either through euthanasia or abortion or suicide. We ask that this light that we are sharing at this moment go and visit each of those homes, bringing some light, some hope to those suffering hearts, that they find the hope that they need, they find the strength to understand the situation, they find the resignation that they need to overcome these challenges, and that they find how beautiful is life and how precious it is, the life we get from God. So we ask for a blessed week for all of us, and we hope that next Sunday we get together here again, learning about another topic. And we also kindly ask God and all the spiritual mentors to help us through this process, the transition process, to coming back physically at TSS, give us all the tools we need to find the best way, and hopefully we can get together physically very soon too. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice and wonderful week. So be it.
So be it. Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you all next week.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joyce.